What's up, Aaron from Self-Actualization Systems, and this topic is probably the topic which most people want to have answered, whether they know it consciously or unconsciously. And that is how to stop being such a slave in life to your highs and to your lows. Now, people usually associate lows as the thing which is the most important. The highs don't really come into it. People love highs. I love highs. I love being excited. I love being super passionate. I like being super driven. I'm not saying that high is bad. I'm saying that it's part of the same problem. If you're being reactive to your emotional state, to your thoughts, to yourself, to the world, to the environment around you, it's not just because of the lows. So as we can see, this diagram, the reason why I picked this diagram is because there's the middle path, which is the most important, right? So we have all the gray stuff over here, which is boredom, and then we have the top part, which is anxiety. They're not useful in this video that we're going over right now. What you can replace these by is the bottom is the lows, all of the things that we would associate as negative emotions, and at the top is actually what we're going to label as something called craving. So the table of contents is going to be step number one. We're going to unpack the illusion that we're living in. The reason why that we have this problem is because we are living in this specific illusion. And we're going to get straight into it in that topic. The second is uncovering the source, the cause, the direction, and the illusion, uncovering where it's coming from. So the epistemology, what causes this reality? What causes this reality? What causes this reality to take hold? And what causes me to still be stuck in the same reality which I created beforehand? And then there's step number three, which is the truth behind healing the cause, source, and direction of the illusion. It's possible to change. You are not stuck. And then finally, the thing which everyone is waiting for is how to heal, integrate, and grow past this block. This is the how-to, the mechanics of transformational change. So we're going to get into step one, which is unpacking the illusion, why you are a slave to yourself. So the belief, perspective, the narrative, that you are your emotions, thoughts, and identity. So if you feel yourself agreeing to that, great. However, if you feel like maybe there's even a bit of frustration or an instinct to challenge me, that's perfectly fair, that's perfectly natural. Just play along, see what I have to say, and then everything will be unpacked over time. Because this right here, the belief, perspective, narratives that you are your emotions, thoughts, and identity, is something that's so culturally ingrained in us, just since birth, since forever, and also because of how we've been using the mind too. It's just sometimes if this gets pointed out to you, it can almost feel like, well, my whole world is built on this, so if I have to let this go, then who even am I, unconsciously? So if there is a little bit of a discomfort, or there's a little bit of a challenge within you, just keep on watching. I promise you that I'm going to explain more without trying to change your perspective. Very important, we're not denying feelings. We're not denying our thoughts. We are not denying the fact that there is a personality here. There is definitely a personality called Aaron from Self-Actualization Systems. There's definitely a personality here. However, these things are parts of you. They are within you. There is something greater which is holding these things. They exist within you, not the other way around. For example, it wouldn't make sense to say that these feelings exist independently of you. These thoughts exist independently of you. Even this personality exists independently of you. I mean, how many anecdotal stories have you heard? I mean, I've heard a ton, where people get into a really bad car accident, or they just get into a really bad accident and their brain gets really damaged, and then they wake up and they have an entirely different personality. They act entirely different. Maybe sometimes they even speak an entirely different language. All of these things, right, show that our personality is transmutable, is changeable. It's something which is subject to change. It's something which is subject to us. Because while that person might have a different personality, it's still that person. And of course, the old Dharma trick, you can watch your thoughts, you can watch your feelings. So your personality, behaviors, and ways of being not only can change, but they already have changed. It's observable. You can do that right now as just as a mental kind of exercise. You can ask yourself, so one of the reality checks that I do on my one-on-one coaching, which is when people are maybe having a tough time seeing progress, even maybe before they've even worked with me. So maybe they might not even we haven't even done a call and they just need a little bit of hope, a little bit of motivation. I say, well, if that's the case, then would you choose to be yourself 6 months ago? You get 6 months extra time. You get 6 months. I'm giving you 6 months of something which you cannot buy, you cannot get. This is time we're talking about. the most precious resource in that sense that we have. And they almost always say no, despite having this gift, because they know that going backwards to that is much, much less favorable than just sticking to where they are, which shows that change has happened. So using that exercise, we can see that our personality has already changed. You are not the same person as you were when you were 5 years old. Most likely, of course, people with learning difficulties, it's a little bit different. But most likely, if you're watching this, if you're resonating with this kind of content, that's not going to be very applicable to you. So despite you clearly not being the same person as you were when you were 5 years old, and all of the massive growth, change, and transformation, the very thing that we're trying to hack here as self-actualization systems, despite all of that, you are still you. You would not mistake yourself for another person. Which, even though your personality at 5 years old was completely different, it's not the same person. It is the same person. And that thing, that person, that persona is something greater than personality. So in other words, you are beyond your personality, because all of these things are changeable and they're transmutable. In Pali, the scripture or the text with which the Buddhist scriptures are written in, I'm not a Buddhist, but I was trained in Theravada Buddhism. In the Pali, we would call this word anicca. Anicca is impermanence. But yet your sense of self, your sense of this being the same person, like we said, we don't mistake that 5-year-old version of you to be something else or somebody other. There's still something that remained. That's what we're working with. And when we can work with that, when we can put our awareness on that without disowning all of the rest, that's when the highs and the lows of life just fall off you like water under a bridge. They just roll off of you because you have reached a level, you've reached a paradigm, you've reached a perspective where these things not only don't affect you, but they cannot affect you. It's like the same inevitability that gravity is going to be here, pulling me down to the earth. That same level of inevitability becomes you if we hack this properly. The problem is we buy into all of these things. We buy into our feelings, we buy into our thoughts, we buy into our personality. We allow these things to take us with them rather than seeing that they are a stream within our ocean. But we get swept along with them because it's our choice. We don't realize we're choosing it, but we get swept along with them. And we choose to get caught up in all of our personal narratives and personal storylines. It can even be fun at first. This is the funny thing. It's fun to feel our emotions. It's fun to really see where they're coming from, our different thoughts, our different parts. And that's what a massive part of this channel is about. So I'm not saying to disown any of that. We need to do our shadow work. We need to do our growing up practice. But what it always comes down to is how we are creating suffering for ourselves. And that is a different question, the big picture meta question that these other things can help with, and they should be integrated and they should be holistic with. But this is the thing which most people are lacking in the self-actualization world. And that is the understanding of suffering, being created for ourselves, and understanding that we are the creator of our suffering. So we become reactive to ourselves rather than being responsive or responding to ourselves. We become dragged with the waves like a surfer that's caught in a riptide, rather than using our surfboard and surfing the waves. The waves are going to be here. We can't control the sea. We can't control the tide, whether it's coming in or out. We can go in and we can go out with it, or we can do what we came to do. We can get on our surfboard and we can ride the waves and realize that we are not the ocean in this particular metaphor. So this is what is happening when it feels like we're constantly being tossed around by our internal world or by our external world, because there's like different stimulus in the external world through the highs and lows of life. We are identifying with these highs and lows, and rather than riding the flow itself and enjoying it that way. So we need to move from a place of identification with this stuff to accepting that it's there, but realizing that it does not define us. So this is why the highs is part of the low question, because the lows, everyone wants to not feel anxious, wants to not feel fear, wants to not feel all of this kind of stuff. That's great. But if we're still being attached to the highs, yes, it's great when we're in the high, but when that high naturally drops down to our baseline, that's when suffering is created, because we're comparing ourselves to what it was before rather than what is. So we need to also let go of our identification, our attachment with the highs, and not just the lows. So uncovering the source of this illusion. It's three things: craving, clinging, aversion. Okay, and we can all colloquially call this craving. So these are three relatively broad categories, but they do cover pretty much every way that we are causing suffering for ourselves, that we are getting caught up in the highs and lows of life, that we are identifying with these things and being reactive to the external and the internal. So craving is, there's this thing over there and I really want it. It's not the same as a healthy desire. You can be passionate, you can have a ton of desire. I have all of these things, I have a ton of this stuff. What I do not have most of the time is craving, and when I do, I know I have to do this practice. Because craving is when you make it personal. Rather than there's a desire and there's an authentic passion arising in me, and it's driving me to do all these things, and I'm doing all this stuff because it's enjoying it. The moment I identify with it, the moment I say, I need this thing, or I want this thing to be happy, or this desire is me. The moment I go to that, it becomes craving. And the difference between desire and passion and craving is there's a tension associated with craving in the mind and in the body. They're the same thing, by the way. They're both mind. But there's a craving there. There's a real, I really need this. Your worldview becomes constricted. It becomes tunnel visioned, and you can't see another perspective. Whenever these symptoms are happening, that's how you know you're in craving. Clinging. This is why we don't cling to the highs. Okay, I have this high, I have this experience, I want more of it, I want it to stay. Now, nothing stays permanently. Not even this body doesn't stay permanently, this mind doesn't stay permanently. We are going to die someday. Nothing in this world that humans experience is permanent. So by clinging to something, we are trying to make something permanent when that's not possible, which leads to the second way where we create suffering for ourselves. We're trying to make something happen which isn't possible. We're trying to hold on to something rather than just let the ebb and flow of life do its thing. It's like going to the ocean and really trying to cling to the waves coming in. You can do it. It's not going to do anything. It's just going to cause more tension and more harm to your mind. And then the last one is aversion. I have this low point that I'm going through. I have these sad feelings. I have this fear. I don't want to feel that anymore, and I'm pushing it away. The problem is when we push something away internally, because it's internal, it's not going anywhere, that energy just comes and pushes back to us. So the more aversion we have to something, the fear of suffering. When I was competing, I used to really have a lot of aversion to feeling nervous, and I just made my nervous state stick even more because I was giving it so much energy. The moment I just accepted it for what it is, that's when I could actually use whatever this state was that was coming up to its fullest potential. So you can colloquially refer to all of these things as craving, yes, but also taking things personally. The moment you start taking things personally, it's death. So I feel shy. That must mean I'm not good enough. I must work harder to not feel shy. Craving. Rather than a healthy desire being, I feel shy, okay, I accept and I love myself still. What is authentically coming up for me is I want to no longer feel shy. Okay, cool. Let me go after that now in the most effective way possible. That's a healthy desire. Wow, I just got a raise. This is so amazing. I'm going to ride this high till the wheels fall off and I don't want it to end. That's clinging. Pretty self-explanatory, right? And the last example is, oh no, I had this conflict with my partner about one of my boundaries being overstepped. I hate confrontation. I just want this to go away. Aversion. You brush something under the rug, it comes back 10 times stronger, 10 times dirtier. So each one makes whatever is happening personal. So if I was to put my hypnotherapy cap in, essentially what it's doing on a psychological level is it's associating us to the problem. When we associate ourselves in the problem, in a hypnotherapy, in an NLP sense, we might want to do that because then we are in the state and we can work ourselves out of the state, which means that we can make sure it's gone for good. That's maybe one approach. But when you're not in an actual hypnotherapy, NLP, shadow work session, you do not want to be doing this. Because until you get a very, very high level of that, which is what I work on for months and sometimes even years for my one-on-one clients to be able to do this on their own, you just get muddled and you're not going to have the mindfulness. It's totally okay, it's a skill, but you're not going to have the mindfulness to do it by yourself. So you don't want to be associating yourself into the problem. If I were to put my developmental psychology cap on, then I would say it attaches us to aspects of our personality more strongly, making it more likely to develop with blind spots later on and making it harder to integrate future lessons, and also maybe integrating different parts of us or not integrating different parts of us that we might either want integrated or not integrated. So if we were to stop doing all of this, what would happen? If we were to catch ourselves at the craving level, if we were to no longer take things personally, what would happen? This is when we get to the truth. How change happens, and it's possible for you. We removed the link between the internal feeling, semantic, and thinking base. So you can think of it like an ecosystem within us. We do not disassociate with this ecosystem. This ecosystem is made up of thoughts, feeling, narratives, beliefs, storylines, ego wants, ego states. We are not disassociating with any of that. We treat all of this with 100% compassion, 100% awareness. We are not trying to suppress or change it without its permission, without its consent. We are the first amongst equals. This is a democracy, an inner democracy, and in an ecosystem within us. We always see ourselves with compassion and allow compassion to work its magic all of the time. And believe me, it is magic. So we're not removing it at that stage. What we are removing the link of is thinking this means something about ourselves. Doesn't mean that we don't take lessons, doesn't mean that we don't use all of this amazing process to have intuitions, to have conclusions, to learn something about our situation and about the situation around us. But it means that we don't buy into any illusion that this is somehow us. Like, let's say I won a competition. That's one of the highs of life, for me back in the day. It would create more suffering if I was to say, yeah, I'm a beast, I'm a massive, good competitor, I'm a world champion. I can have all these thoughts, I can have all these feelings embodied, but the moment I take these things as personal, I take the win as personal, is the moment I attach my sense of self-worth, my sense of self to the competition, which makes my sense of self, my sense of self-worth, my confidence inherently flimsy, because this is something external to me. So an example of how you would handle a competition if you were to win, in a way which doesn't create suffering, is you appreciate that feeling, you have compassion for yourself, you're like, wow, I'm so proud of myself, that's amazing. But you do not create any storyline or identity, any this is me, this is mine, this is myself, any craving, clinging, or aversion around that. So you don't have any craving for more competitions to win. You can have a healthy desire for sure, but you don't have any craving, which is that tension we talked about. You don't have any clinging to the result. You enjoy it, you have appreciation, you have joy, but you don't cling to it. And you don't have any aversion to losing, or losing the world championship, losing this, losing that. And how do you get to all of these three things? You come to the realization that you are something greater. There is something more than this. So we stop buying into the illusion that any of these things that are happening within us are personal, means something about us intrinsically, has to be something we're inherently reactive to. This is how we rewrite our personality from the ground up, from a meta sense. So a lot of the other videos that I've talked about, not all of them, are about shadow work, waking up, growing up, showing up. These are amazing, but these are still dealing with the self in a lowercase letter. And that's amazing. You will decrease suffering, you will achieve more with more ease, with more effortless. You'll be able to see more perspective, have more compassion, understand social dynamics, understand how somebody is working. You'll be able to do all of that, and that's amazing. But the big picture thing, which is breakthroughs I'm having now, even now, there will always be breakthroughs around this, is always about, am I creating this suffering for myself? The answer is always yes. So if we don't integrate this perspective and don't have this as a North Star, as an internal direction to move towards, then the rest of that will inherently be limited. It will still be massively comprehensive, but if we don't have this perspective, this guiding principle, then it's almost an exercise in futility because we don't have this North Star. I can hear people asking questions. Yeah, Aaron, I'm super bought in. I can see how this is working. I can see how the logic behind it. I can see how I'm actually creating it for myself. But this thing around making it personal, how do I not do that? How do I stop myself from doing that? How do I have see from the same sense of perspective that you do? I can kind of do it a little bit, like I can work through my shadows and I can see how I'm not my beliefs, and as I move up through development, I can see different perspectives, and as I show up and I can't just be disciplined and I move through all of that stuff, I can see how that changes me. But when it comes to this internal ecosystem, as you call it, like you're saying that you can appreciate it, you can work with it, this is amazing, this is something within you, but this does not mean something inherently about you. You are something greater. Like what does that mean? How do I get to that? To have a fully integrated transformation, one that's permanent, aligned with your core values, your core principles, your core ideals, your core directionality, where you want to go, and one that's effective, adjusted, and fully capable with the external. So it's not just the internal transformation, but it's also an external transformation, aka you'll see external results. There are 4 different paths to go down. So we talked about this, dealing with shadow disturbances. This is the bread and butter of this channel because it's the thing which, once this gets solved for people, it opens up their eyes like crazy, and it delivers the biggest, massive black and white changes of transformation that I've seen, which is why I always lead with it. And it gives people the biggest sense of relief in the fastest way possible. That's why I made my free comprehensive product, which is the most practical guide to shadow work on the internet, the step-by-step guide on how to actually create meaningful and permanent change within yourself, your relationships, and your life as a whole. The more shadow we heal, let go of, and integrate and re-own, the easier whatever stage of life we are in will be to navigate and to move through without rushing, without creating suffering for ourselves. And the more resilient we will be to chaotic environments, chaotic ecosystems. Let's say that's a family, that's a work environment, that's starting a business, that's going into competition. I recently just have a client who's performing in a really big kind of West End style play, showing up to that too. Do we get more resilient as well? Because there'll be disturbances all of the time. There's about healing those disturbances, but then when those disturbances show up, do we have that sense of inevitability that I talked about in the beginning? Where yes, I can feel anxious and I can feel nervous, all good. That's what we're trying to get to too. And the definitions you need to know, which I go into in extensive detail in my free product, are introjections, projections, and split ego states. If you don't understand these distinctions, like I said, I go into details with these into the product, so I won't go into detail with them now, but introjections are essentially beliefs that we've taken on from the external and we have to let go of. Projections are shadows or parts of ourselves that we don't want to own, and we're projecting our power, our sense of power, freedom, and autonomy onto the world, so we have to re-own them. And split ego states are parts, ego states, like mini people, mini versions of me at different stages of life within me that feel like they're split off from the rest of me. And the healing process of that is reintegration. If you do not understand these distinctions, I first learned about these distinctions from Kim Barter, although they've been around for much longer. If you don't understand these distinctions, like if you just do IFS, which is a great framework, but it just talks about seeing everything as a part and reintegrating, that will lead to months, years, or sometimes even decades of not only just being stuck, but going backwards. Because if you try and let go of an authentic part, that's bad. If you try and integrate an insecurity, that's bad too. So you need to understand these distinctions, as well as the big framework that I put them in my program. Otherwise, you're just hurting yourself in the long term. So if you don't understand these distinctions, you'll reinforce insecurities, feel less powerful and able to function internally and externally in the world. And lastly, you'll feel like you're constantly fighting yourself. Doing this step will solve 80% of your problems. Because when you get a master or handle on shadow work, then it automatically makes you buy into your mind much, much less, because you can see how you've been creating narratives and storylines for yourself which just aren't true. Second, you need to have a real strict spiritual practice. This is basically where the next 15% of this is going to come from, which is a big part. So I talked about realizing that there's something greater. Well, how this gets developed is realizing how the mind is something which you can observe. And if the mind is something you can observe, and storylines, narratives, beliefs come from the mind, then you are something which is immovable from the mind, because the mind can't look back at itself. For instance, when you're stuck in a bad belief, or when you're stuck in a belief about the world, if you operate from within that belief can't turn in and look back at itself. There's something which that mind, that belief is inhabiting. So the more you identify with that, again, without disowning the rest of it, this is why I gave it to you in 4 parts. If you don't have these 4 parts, then disowning will actually come very naturally, which is quite a shame in the industry. The more you can associate with the watcher, with the awareness, with the thing which the narratives are created in, the space which the narratives are created in, you get an order of magnitude less reactive to your thoughts, fears, emotions, belief, ego wants. So by meditating for at least 30 minutes, up to around 90 minutes a day, or 2 hours or 3 hours, I've done all of those sits before, those are great too, you will be seeing all of the insights that I described in this video, semi-permanently to permanently, much, much more naturally. And the more embodied these insights become, the less reactive you become in general. And with this guide that I've given, the more responsive you'll be able to be. That sense of inevitability that we're talking about, of being unflappable. A great word for it is unshakable, which is what my mentor Pierre de Souza has called his brand. To get these things, it's about moving from reaction to responsiveness. And how do you do that? Well, you create space within yourself. And that's what meditation does. It leads to feeling less chaotic inside. You feel more driven, you feel less reactive to negative emotions, so you can push through them without any real effort. Less reactive to highs, so you get distracted by shiny object syndrome, way less. And overall, you're able to feel like a leader in your own life rather than feeling subservient to it. To name only just a few benefits, but these are the main benefits which I think people are going to resonate with. I recommend TWIM. Okay, but you can go with others. But for me, if you've listened to me long enough, please take my word for it. Tranquil Wisdom Insight Meditation by Dharma Sukha is the way to go. Third, do your homework on developmental psychology, systems thinking, and psychology in general. Understand the trends of how your mind thinks, behaves, and structures reality. This will take so much confusion out of your journey. So we got the shadow work, we got the meditation. These are two like real practices that we can go into. This is more of the theory and understanding how the mind works from not just one perspective, but so many different perspectives. Confusion, unfortunately, a lot of the time can be a breeding ground for feeling very chaotic, disorganized, and a lack of direction. So in case this is the reason why you're feeling confused or feeling all of these things, we can just nip that one in the bud. My recommendations: Ego Development Theory by Suzanne Cook-Greuter, Stages International by Terry O'Fallon, Sex, Ecology and Spirituality by Ken Wilber. These are all great places to start. Be patient, do not rush this. This is a life practice. This is an ecosystem we are building within us. And number 4, actually just fucking show up and embrace life for what it is, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Warts and all, as the saying goes. Don't be afraid of getting your elbows dirty. Go out, fail, and fail big. Whether this is a socializing practice because you're shy and you need to get a bit more extroverted, whether this is actually going out and starting a business and having that fucking uncertainty where you don't know where your next meal is going to come from. Actually just going out and starting maybe a martial art because you're afraid of confrontation and you feel really called to do that. And embracing the fact that you're going to suck, you're going to be out of breath and it's going to hurt. If you fail small, if you're just failing small, you never get almost that adrenaline rush, that intensity of, wow, like I really went out there and I gave it my all. And if you never fail big, then you never know how emotionally resilient you actually are. So the bigger the failure, the bigger the lesson. The bigger the lesson, the bigger the breakthrough will be, okay? The more you can fail and the bigger you can fail, the faster your progress will be. Do not get trapped in perfection. Do not get disheartened when big existential problems like this don't get fixed overnight. That's really, really important. Don't shut yourself off from the possibility of massive, radical self-transformation, because I promise you it is possible if you follow all of this. But don't be naive either. We're here to show up every day, consistent. Put the odds in our favor. And if you do all of this, if you ask me questions, if you sign up to the free product, if you get as much support from me as you can, and other mentors as well that you respect too, and you are really willing to commit 3, 5, 6 months to this, you will become not just a totally different person, but a totally different person after you've been through 2 or 3 big transformations. Enjoy.